Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about everything I use for seed starting. We are approaching that season. Some of you may already have started. I personally have started on onions already, and I will be starting on quite a few things here in the upcoming week. So I just wanted to kind of sit down today and talk about all things I use for seed starting. I often get asked a lot of questions, so I figured it would be good just to make an all-in-one video. Let me just kind of preface this though with saying that this is not necessary. Over the years, I've used pretty much the bare minimum when it comes to starting seeds. And did I still get plants and did they still produce? Yes. So take everything I use today with a grain of salt. I just want to share the things that I personally love and that have made my life a lot easier. You can also just direct seeds in your ground if you're trying to save money. Seed starting can be a little bit of an investment up front. A lot of this stuff I have had for years on end now, and I start a lot of seeds. I personally can save quite a bit of money with how many plants I start. For instance, I can get a whole seed packet of cabbage, say like 30 to 40 seeds for about $3, when one single start is going to average you probably right around $3 to $5 per start at your local garden nursery. So you can see that if you're starting a decent sized garden, I definitely don't have a super large garden. I would consider mine large. It does take up majority of my backyard, but you can definitely save a lot of money, especially over the year. So if this is something that you really like and you want to stick with it, definitely maybe put forth the investment. It can definitely extend your season. You can just go ahead and sow seeds in the ground, but by me having a lot of this equipment, I'm able to start rounds of seeds a lot earlier and get a little bit more out of my space than I would if I didn't start seeds. So that's just kind of the thing I want to preference this with. I do know that this is a lot of different things. Again, not all of it's necessary. I have some clips even back from 2020 where I have this one single light and some really basic nursery pots. They are still in the cycle, guys. And you can see I have just a very simple setup. Nowadays is a little bit more complicated, but why don't we just go ahead and jump into it? So my most asked question, we might as well just start with first. I won't make you guys wait for it, is lighting. I have 4 different rounds of lighting. Over the years, I've kind of just grown my lighting as I could. Lighting is definitely probably the biggest investment when it comes to seed starting. And I have realized it's all kind of around at the same price for what you get. So for instance, if we dive over here, these pink strips are all a brand called Brina. I got them off Amazon. I think I have 2 packages of them, and per package is roughly $60. So you can see these 3 shelves, that investment's roughly $120. Then I have these 2 lights here, and these are just a company called Y-Grow. I have 2 of these. These are $60 a pop. So you can see these are also $120, but I can really only use them for one little strip. Going back to what I kind of said in the beginning, I only had 1 of these lights. I ended up buying 2 that seed starting season because I started so many seeds, and I realized at one point, oh, my light needs to be lower. I'm not having enough light on these seedlings. They're not growing correctly. You can see my Barinas here. They are literally hanging by zip ties, so I can't adjust these lights at all. If I want the seeds to be closer up, which is smarter, especially when they're little, so that way they don't get leggy, I will prop them up with some blocks or some extra trays I have when they are young if I'm using this tray. I have liked these lights over the years. The Barinas have worked really well for me. I've had them for about 3 years. I've had these Y-Grows for a little bit longer than that, and they've always worked really well. This system over here is a whole system by Active Grow. I really like their lights. Their lights are definitely a lot stronger, and they are just a little bit more expensive per light. So per light, I think they're roughly like $70 to $80. But I have found that with how bright these are, I get really good quality starts out of them, and I haven't had as much trouble transitioning them outside when I'm hardening them off compared to my Barinas. These will get the job done and they work really well. I've gotten some really good starts off of them, but they aren't as bright as my Active Grow ones. And again, I feel like I just have to baby these starts a little bit more when I transition them outside. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. That's something I've personally noticed over the years with kind of playing around with different lights. But honestly, I've used a little bit of everything. My preference, if I had to choose, would probably be my active grows. I will be the first to admit I don't know a lot of the science behind grow lights. I honestly should probably look into it a little bit more, but I really just haven't, just because mostly my lights are used for seed starting. I have been overwintering one of my plants, but yeah, that's kind of the gist on that. So the next thing I have is a heat mat, and I personally really like these heat mats. I have a few that are smaller. They're like a 1 by maybe a 1 by 2. These are a 2 by 4, so you can fit about 4 seedling trays on this, and it's really, really nice. It works well. So I use a heat mat when I am germinating my seeds. So I do all of my seed starting in my basement. Honestly, it's a little bit chilly down here. So my peppers honestly will stay on the heat mat probably for like the first 3 to 4 weeks as they are germinating. I just now pulled my onions off the heat mats. I did have my heat mats on for my onions for the first 2 weeks, and they just got pulled. They're still on here, but these fit very nicely on this shelf. This is a 2 by 4 shelf. They also fit nicely on this because they're a 4-length shelf. They kind of hang over a little bit, but that's fine. The trays just fit really nicely onto, ta-da. The ones that I've personally ordered off Amazon come in a 2-pack, and I think they're roughly like $50. I don't keep my seeds on the heat mat past like the germinating phase. At that point, I kind of let them get used to the air. This space roughly averages like 65, which is fine for most things. It's a little bit chillier, but the heat mat definitely helps during that whole germination process, especially with things like peppers and tomatoes that really like warm soil. You don't necessarily need a heat mat when it comes to starting any of your cold weather crops like brassicas, so broccoli, cabbage, your lettuce varieties. Those things already like it cold anyway, so there's really not like a big need for that. Next up is one I don't see talked about too often, but it is fans. So I have this small fan. I have another floor, like outdoor fan I keep in here. I have another fan that's a little bit taller that can kind of swivel around. I have 2 to 3 fans going at all times when I have seeds going down here. Good airflow will help your seedlings a lot. It also helps, for instance, I live in Kansas, so it's obviously windy here. And one thing a fan can also help with outside of just good airflow, it can really help strengthen the base of your plants and just make them be able to adapt to the conditions outside that much easier. So especially, I think a fan is one of those things that's definitely overlooked, but I think is personally really important. I have multiple fans, and I think it's good to at least have 2. That way you can make sure the air is circulating really well. And if you have something like this, where I have this tent and it kind of blocks it off, I like to have the airflow still go into that tent and still circulate the air, especially when I have a lot of plants going down here. Again, it's just really good to circulate that air. I think fans are really important. Okay, next we're going to dive into seedling pots, and I have a few here. I do have a preference. So over the years, I've tried some smaller I've tried some smaller ones. I also soil block, and we'll kind of dive into that a little bit. But I have noticed personally, if I'm going to put a plant in a nursery pot, that plant's going to be living in my basement for a minimum of roughly like 8 weeks. Otherwise, it's probably going to be soil blocked. And I really like when a nursery pot at least has close to a 3-inch opening. So these are my very first nursery pots. I don't necessarily have to use these anymore. These are kind of my last resort nursery pots, and I kind of want to show you. These are kind of a reference. So these are a little bit shorter. When it comes to one of my favorite nursery pots, you can see it's about a whole inch taller. And when you are starting something like a tomato that grows really fast, your tomato will completely fill this nursery pot by about 6 weeks. So with that being said, say you start your tomatoes just a little bit too early. I really like these 5-inch pots. So going over this, these are kind of my last resorts, but again, I really like having a 3-inch opening. My tried and trues have been this one. This is just an everyday black nursery pot that I have bought off Amazon. I have bought multiple of these. I've been using these for about 6 years. They've just been really flexible. I haven't had many of them break on me at all. They've worked really well. I'm able to get plants out of them really easily. Bootstrap Farmer just came out with one. This is a Bootstrap Farmer. Bootstrap Farmer just came out with a I think it's like a 3 1/4, maybe 3-inch pot. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited to try this because you can see it is very flexible. And I really like Bootstrap Farmer products. You'll see I'm going to dive into a lot of Bootstrap Farmer here in a second. I am an affiliate with them now, but I did buy them before I was ever an affiliate with Bootstrap. So these are really flexible. I'm really excited to try these. And they're very similar to my tried and true ones that I have always loved. One thing I love about Bootstrap is they have these systems for their nursery pots where, so here, I'm able to fit 8 of these and it's very secure. I'm walking up and down my stairs when I am hardening off seedlings, and I'll be the first to admit, my very first 3 years of seed starting, I was using old cookie sheets. Cookie sheets are very stable, but having a seedling tray that has a high sidewall, we'll get into seedling trays in a minute, but having the high sidewall, and then they have these inserts here that hold everything in place. It makes everything just that much more secure. And when you're like me, especially if you're using these big 5-inch pots, the extra security is really nice. I'll kind of show you an example here where if I were to use these, I have, oh, did I not set them over here? I didn't set them over here. Okay, let me grab those real quickly. I used these before I ever had my 5-inch Bootstrap Farmer ones, and these are probably the least quality item I have for seed starting. They got the job done. They're still used. I've washed them. They've held up. I've had more of these break though. But for instance, I can only fit, these are only about an inch, maybe a half an inch bigger than the Bootstrap Farmer ones, and I can only fit 5 to 6 of these comfortably, and they slosh around, and that does not get any better when the plant gets heavier. It makes it even harder. So I like their systems, especially with the seedling trays. I think it just is like an all-in-one really nice thing. But I am really excited to try these ones. Again, these have always been my tried and trues, but I really like ones that are a little bit taller, again, because things like tomatoes will fill this out in about a 6 to 8 week period. But if I don't use a nursery pot, the one thing I really like to use is my soil blocker. So one thing you may notice is I do have all of my onions here. These are all soil blocks. So a soil block is just going to compact the soil together. And this allows your roots not to be restricted. So a lot of the times, a lot of these nursery pots, they do have good airflow and stuff in the bottom, and those roots can grow out, but it's still going to be restricted on those sides regardless. This allows the roots to kind of just do its own thing. So I really like to use soil blocks if I'm going to be growing things out in about a 4 to 6 week period. This is just really nice because I don't have the extra cleanup of nursery pots, and then I'm able just to grab this and plop it into the soil. So I was really tedious this year with growing onions. In the past, I would kind of sow a decent amount of seeds per block, but this year I tried to do as many as I could, 1 seed per block. That way I could have a little less root disturbance and a little bit more ease when I go to planting. So I can just dig a really quick hole, plop this into the soil come March, and let that grow. I'm really just excited to see if that's going to make a difference. That's like one of the few things I did differently this year, but I really like soil blocks. Soil blocks though can be a bit tricky. So if this is your first year starting a garden, or maybe even just starting seeds in general, I don't know if this is as beginner friendly as just filling up a soil pot and calling it a day. I will say you do need to have a good consistency to your soil, and you do want to make sure you compact it really well. This does take time. I will say this is probably like the one negative downfall to a soil blocker is if I am going to do soil blocks, I think it took me roughly, I would say like 30 to 40 minutes to create all of those soil blocks for onions, but that's also going to save me time later from getting the plant out of the pot and then also cleaning those pots. So it's one of those things where it can seem like it's a little bit more just time heavy up front, but I really do love soil blocking. I'm going to jump back to trays now. So these are 10-20 trays, everyday basic trays. These are also from Bootstrap. So Bootstrap has an array of different colors, and they also have just plain black. When it comes to these seedling trays, the one thing that really made me kind of gravitate toward Bootstrap Farmer is I bought the really cheap seedling trays that you can buy from Lowe's and Home Depot, and I just saw how crappy quality they were because they didn't hold anything. They were so flimsy. They broke by year one, and I just saw how durable these were. This is a 20-pound weight, and you can see this really is not warping at all. I have really found that these trays are truly strong. I personally like to have a layer system. So they also have these mesh trays, and I have found these mesh trays just to be very necessary if I'm doing soil blocks. So kind of let me pull down these onions yet again. Okay, so I have a double layer system when I do soil blocks. I personally like to use the mesh tray to hold all of my soil blocks, and then I use a 10-20 everyday tray underneath it. This allows me to water everything, and then the plants can soak up the water, and then they're not sitting in water. I like to do a bottom water method a lot of the time when I am doing seed starting. Outside of like getting the seed started, I will typically miss them, but I do like to deep water, and this allows everything to get watered without just sitting in water, and that's also just really important for the soil block. So these mesh trays are honestly one of my absolute favorite things. Again, this just allows the soil block to sit really nicely inside, and I can just allow water to pass through. I also just like these, again, for allowing my nursery pots to sit on top of everything. It's that one extra thing that is not necessary at all, but it's made my life a lot easier because I also just don't have access to water in this room really easy. So if I can just pour some water into a tray and allow things to kind of soak it up themselves and not sit in water, that actually has saved me a lot of time. So that's kind of the system I really like. Again, these are both Bootstrap Farmers. I like the 2-inch sidewalls. I kind of mentioned this a little bit when it comes to just the nursery pots. So when you are going up and down the stairs, it's just really nice to be able to know your plants aren't going anywhere. Again, I used old cookie sheets for a long time, and then I invested in Bootstrap Farmer trays, and I was like, wow, these are so nice. I think it was one of those things I really appreciated because of all the years of using cookie trays. My cookie sheets would have such little short sidewalls, and then going up and down the stairs, no matter how hard I tried, I would still have like a plant slip off or something and tumble down the stairs. It was so sad. So I lost a lot of plants to those cookie sheets, but they got the job done. Maybe that gives you an idea if it's like one of your first years seed starting and you don't want to invest fully. If you have some old cookie sheets sitting around, those can work really well for seedling trays. So when it comes to seed starting, I use an everyday potting soil. I use an organic potting soil. I have used this one for about 7 years. I've used a few others a few times when I haven't been able to get my hands on this, but this is just kind of my one I grabbed. This is something I can grab at my local nursery. It's just organic potting mix. I have found that seed starting mix isn't necessary, and seed starting mix has zero nutrition to it. So if you germinate your seeds in a seed starting mix, you're going to have to start feeding your plants a lot sooner than someone that's using an organic potting soil. So I like to sprinkle worm castings in my potting mix. So this year I actually haven't got my hands on it yet, but I do want to do like a kelp fertilizer. So speaking of fertilizers, in past years when it comes to feeding seedlings, I did not know the importance of feeding seedlings until a handful of years ago. And I've always just used like a liquid all-purpose organic fertilizer because I found that it just to be easy to be able to mix with water and be able to bottom water. I mix with worm castings, but this year I really want to play around with trying out a kelp fertilizer. But kind of jumping back to potting soil, one thing I really love is my blue bin. This is just a blue storage bin that I throw all my soil in. So I put my soil in this and I'll just take my jug and fill it with water, and I will pre-moisten all of my soil in this bin. This also allows me just to take a nursery pot really easy, scoop some soil, compact it, not make a mess. This allows me to make my soil blocks in here. So I really like this, especially being inside. I have found this to be like one of the best things to help me out over the years. I didn't do this for years, and it's one of those really simple things that when I started to do it, I felt like it was just, again, such a game changer. So if you have an old bin laying around that's not being used, use that. I used a smaller tub for a while, especially when I wasn't starting as many seeds. Again, just use something that's laying around. It's holding soil. Like, you don't have to go out and buy anything for that, but if it has a lid and if you're able to kind of use it to kind of make a mess, it really just kind of helps keep everything, you know, all there. So jumping back to the topic of water, when it comes to this room, I don't have access to water in this room at all. So I will typically use a spray bottle when it comes to germinating my seeds. And then I do a lot of bottom watering, like I said. So I typically just keep like a jug like this. I will fill it up with water and I'll pour it into my seedling trays and fill them from the bottom. I also really loved using a pump sprayer, just one of those $10 to $15 pump sprayers that you can find around the garden or like insecticide area of a home, like a Home Depot or a Lowe's. Those are so nice and they're cheap. I have got my hands on an electric sprayer over the years, and this is just, again, that much nicer than a pump sprayer, but a pump sprayer is going to get the job done. I really like having a sprayer on hand when it comes to seedlings because you're not going to want to water over the top of them and make your seedlings kind of go everywhere. I have found that I really like to use something that will mist or spray. This is really cheap. And after that, I will deep water. I found that to be kind of the system I really like to do when it comes to watering. And then another thing I find so necessary is painter's tape. This is something I love to have when it comes to just labeling something real fast. Well, of course, I mess up when I'm trying to do it, but I can just take this. It rips obviously really easy. I can throw it on a nursery pot really fast. I can put this on a seedling tray really fast, and it's not going to make a mess. So after seed starting, I can just take it off, clean the pot, call it a day. And if it wasn't for painter's tape, I don't know if I would label as well. Painter's tape has come in hand so often, and honestly, I find it a must when it comes to my seed starting process. So get yourself a little thing of tape. I also found that the little sticks over the years end up getting lost. Painter's tape though, if you label each one and then you end up moving things around, they're still going to be labeled because you labeled each one. So, and there's times where what I'll do, I'm sorry if this seems like such a waste, but I will also just take a whole strip like this and put it onto the table. And then I will write out, say 10, 15 different labels, and then I will just cut all of those out and then go through each one and label it really fast. That's one way you can do it just a little bit faster. A few other things you may not have considered kind of having in your area during seed starting time would just be a garden tool that you can easily mix soil with. The last thing you want to do is have to go find this on a cold day when it's snowing in your shed. Some garden gloves, again, because our hands are going to be in soil, especially when you're mixing super wet soil for soil blocks and stuff like that. Garden gloves, and then always have some scissors. You're opening bags, you're cutting things like tape, things like that. Those are 3 things I think are really important. It's also nice to have a pair of pruners on hand. You don't necessarily need them for a lot of things, but if you are going to pinch back certain plants, and also just kind of trim up certain things, having pruners in your area is also really nice to have. And lastly, so I think that kind of covers everything I have really used, my tried and trues over the years. The one thing that's new to me this year, it's not necessarily new. I've used a humidity dome once. It was in year 1. It came with a super cheap seedling tray that I got from Home Depot, and it completely broke that first year. I'm sure you'll see there's at least one video on my channel of me saying humidity domes aren't necessary, which I still stand. They're not necessary, but I am really excited to have them on hand. So a humidity dome is going to just help your soil not dry out, and that is really important when it comes to the germinating process. So these just sit really nicely on a 10-20 tray, and again, it's just going to trap the humidity in there. This is something that once your seeds germinate, you really don't want to keep it on top of. You don't want that humidity to stay trapped once your seedlings get going, but it can really help just aid in the germinating process. So for example, I've been growing grass for my cats and my chickens, and this one little strip here, I've had a few issues where the whole pallet necessarily won't fully germinate. I'll have like a dry spot. So when I try to trap the humidity, I have better luck. So I'm really excited to have these on hand. I'm definitely going to use these when it comes to germinating my seedlings. So maybe this will be the year that I really change my mind and find them more necessary, especially maybe in my space. Maybe it will allow more of a greenhouse effect with my seedlings and allow them to also stay just a little bit warmer on those seedling mats and germinate that much better. Because again, I am doing a lot of my seed starting in my basement, and it is a little bit chilly. Again, I just want to make sure that you guys know the importance of this is not necessary if you want to grow your own food and start a garden. I think it is really important to show that, because this is an investment. This just allows me to really extend my season, get the most out of my space. But if you are just starting out and you're not sure if that's something you necessarily want to stick to yet, you might not want to make an investment like that. And I totally understand. That's why I started off so small in the beginning and I grew into this. I really truly started off as small as you possibly could start and just continue to grow when I realized this was something I really wanted to stick to. So I hope my list today kind of just will help you make your life easier if you're trying to make any decisions on a few things. I will have everything listed down below in the description box. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I can't wait to be able to vlog with you guys a little bit more. I'm like itching to vlog. I've been doing so many sit down videos at the beginning of the year, and that's typically what I do though. Over the course of like January and February, I think I have like the most sit down videos, and it's mostly just because I want to share everything I know that will make your guys' lives that much easier during the spring season if you are starting a garden. So either way, I think that's going to conclude today's video. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.